Yeah, I'll start with that. I think that the events of the last year within the Middle East, across North Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, now Syria, are not completely unknown or an error by this administration or by Western leadership. I think in particular this administration right now in the United States and Washington, D.C. deliberately set out to empower the Muslim Brotherhood. That is happening at home as well as happening across the Middle East. Without the United States, events certainly would have unfolded in some way. We do not control all of that for sure. But our actions and our support for the Muslim Brotherhood ensured in some sense, in some measure, that this would go the way it's going.
There is either our intelligence agencies are the most incompetent third graders I've ever seen, or there is something else going on, and I happen to believe there was something else going on, because there's no way anybody with any common sense and any I don't have any formal education, any education at all, and you miss the Muslim Brotherhood coming through, and how did you not see this?
No. Something else is going on, Glenn, and there's no question as we sit back and look at all the events in the Middle East, that, as Claire says, something else is driving it. We had a conversation before, I don't just blame this administration. I passed some of that blame to the previous administration before, as you suggested, George Bush out there, Condoleezza Rice. We want everybody to have freedom, but it's okay to want people to have freedom, but it's also okay for our government to get involved in where that freedom goes. That is, if you're kicking somebody out and there's a whole bunch of people trying to take his place, we should be in there early on helping pick who the players are, not waiting until the players have been determined and then going in and saying we want to do something with you.
But wouldn't this be more akin to what I kept coming to, and General, you might remember this from your years in school. George Washington counseled against, with Jefferson and Paine, do not go to France. And they were like, no, this is a glorious revolution for the people. It's the same scenario. And he said, do not go there because it's not the same. And he said, don't support it at all because it's not the same. Isn't that kind of where we should have gone? I mean...
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. First of all, if we're going to, in any way, try to understand what's happening in the world, we have to understand history, and we also have to understand the theology, the Islamic theology, as well as the theology of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood was created to recreate the Ottoman Empire. Now, if you go back in history and you look at what's happening here, any analyst that was worth his salt would see that what's coming together is a recreation of the Ottoman Empire. Pastor Hagin and I were talking about that.
Absolutely.
Any analyst should be able to see that, but there is a willful blindness in this administration and the past administration because they don't want to face up to the realities that that's what's happening. And what you're seeing is you're seeing the global caliphate coming back together. Oh, there's that word again, caliphate. But it's theological. The analysts that have studied this know that. But the administration and those in positions of authority are unwilling to allow that kind of information to become public or for us to take any action based on that.
You remember when you were on my show a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago? I mean, General, I almost wept when you were on my show because you were one of the only ones that would stand up and say, you're right. Everybody from the left and the right hammered me for saying that a caliphate is coming. Now we are sitting at a place to where we've got the Muslim Brotherhood in our own country, in our own Pentagon, in our own cities all across. We have the Muslim Brotherhood growing all over the Middle East. They're now starting to connect with Iran. All these pieces are coming together. Is it too late for us to change course?
Well, one thing you need to add to what you just said, what unites them is a single enemy, and that enemy is Israel. They can all hate the Jews.
Jerry, you know, I think you hit it right on the head, the nail on the head, when you talked about willful blindness. There is a mindset in the West, and in particular also in the United States, that says jihadis who are violent, as Al-Qaeda is, are bad jihadis. But the Muslim Brotherhood currently in the West, and in the United States at least, are not violent in the same way that Al-Qaeda is violent. They are in a pre-violent stage, we might say. And so the decision was made consciously, deliberately, that Al-Qaeda would be fought, Al-Qaeda would be taken down, but the Muslim Brotherhood would be nurtured almost, would be worked with in order to provide a counterbalance. But it's willful blindness, as you say exactly, that they do not understand their ideology is the same, their objectives are precisely the same, caliphate and Sharia law.
I don't think it's willful blindness. I think the people at the head of this snake here in our own country are willfully blinding people. They are. It's not. I'm not choosing to be blind. You're being blinded, and if you won't be blinded, you'll be silenced.
Well, I mean, partially they're not equipped. You know, they're a little bit like a vegetarian at a cannibal's picnic. I mean, they don't quite get the mindset. And here we're talking about...
How much percentage do you think that's going on in our government? Because I don't know how you don't see it.
I think
how many are vegetarians at a cannibal?
Right. There are different groups, different parts of this. There are different layers to this. There are some who are guiding things and directing things exactly what you just said. They know exactly what they're doing.
They're inviting they're inviting the vegetarians in.
But others don't understand. They really don't, and they don't do their homework, so they are willfully blind.
They're also trained in a secular mindset, and so they're completely oblivious to the obvious fact that there is a mysterious and monumental volume called the Bible, which contains the title deeds to the land of Israel, and which obviously is highly significant to every step of the progress of history in the Middle East. And yet to many governmental bureaucrats, it is nothing but a primitive book that has always been an obstruction to progress, utterly irrelevant to politics and utterly irrelevant to tomorrow's headlines, which is a terrible mistake, because one of the fatal errors that crops out of this is, and again, we're looking at people who were trained in mutual assured destruction, the Cold War policy for many years, and that says to them, oh, don't be ridiculous, you are panic-stricken. Do you really think the Iranians are going to let off a nuclear bomb? Come on, nobody would do a thing like that.
Hijackers.
But it's not true.
Isn't the same mutually assured destruction would tell you that you would never hijack a plane, stay in the plane, and run it into a building?
If you admit there is a problem, you have to solve the problem. And that's the willful blindness. They don't want to admit this problem exists, and theology is a driving force in this radical Islamic element, and it is a theology of death. They truly teach that the best way, the only way to get to heaven is to die killing someone who disagrees with you theologically, which defines every Christian and every Jew on the face of the earth. People who believe that Iran will not use the bomb are deluded. They will use it. And their idea that their Messiah will show up whenever they create a global chaos that can be created by nuclear warfare. They want it to happen. And we're sitting over here with our people giving us reports of how far off this bomb is, because we don't want to admit that there's a real war about to start in the Middle East that could totally encompass the earth. And we are too cowardly to call the facts what they truly are.